What if Padme had an affair during the Clone War? Let's start this story during the first year of the Clone War. Anakin was away at war often, resulting in Padme being left on Coruscant alone, forever wondering whether Anakin was alive or whether he had fallen in battle. The constant anxiety over Anakin's well-being, coupled with the political stress over the war, became too much for Padme to handle, and she searched elsewhere for support. One day she would cross paths with a former colleague and senator of the international banking clan of the Republic, Rush Clovis. Clovis was adopted into an influential Moon family of Scipio and began his political career at a young age. He and Padme had a minor fling in their early years as senators, but Amidala eventually rejected Clovis's advancements and made their relationship strictly professional. But Padme, now lonely and stressed, went looking for support, in which Clovis provided, and they rekindled their relationship. Clovis was instantly infatuated with Padme once again, as deep down, his love for her never left. They began spending a lot of time together, working in each other's offices whilst also spending time outside of work, at restaurants and other activities. They grew closer, Padme enjoying her time with Rush and free from the anxiety that Anakin provided. Clovis would eventually make a move on Padme, in which she would reciprocate, and their relationship would begin. Initially, Padme didn't tell Clovis about Anakin, but had to as Anakin was due back home in a couple of weeks. They discussed what Padme would do, and she decided she could no longer live in constant fear regarding Anakin, a decision Rush was extremely happy about, although he didn't show it. He reassured Padme that this was the right thing to do, and he would support her in this decision. Anakin returns after a long 3-month siege in the Outer Rim, extremely excited to see Padme once again. He finishes his mission summaries at the Jedi Temple as soon as possible, and rushes to Padme's office in the Senate building immediately. He enters the room to find Padme standing by her desk and hugs her deeply. He pulls away to kiss her, but takes a step back, holding up a hand to stop him as confusion flickers across his face. She asks him to sit down, and reluctantly he does, sensing something is wrong. Padme looks at him, her eyes filled with guilt and pain, as she reveals she has something to tell Anakin. His heart begins to race, and he now knows something isn't right. Padme reveals the truth, that whilst he was away fighting in the war, she had an affair with Senator Rush Clovis whilst they were working together. Anakin's voice is strained as he mutters Clovis's name, feeling a weight crushing in his chest, as if the air has been sucked out of the room. His hands clench into fists, his knuckles turning white. He's barely containing the fury building up inside of him as the door to Padme's office swings open, and in walks Rush Clovis, who stops in his tracks, seeing Anakin there, a look of anger over his face, and he realizes the mistake he has made, interrupting the conversation. Anakin stands up slowly, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. He points his finger towards Clovis, who takes a step back, but before he can react, Anakin lunges at him, igniting his sapphire blue blade. Padme screams, rushing forward to stop Anakin, but it's too late. The blue blade pierces through Clovis's chest, his eyes widening in shock and pain as he collapses to the floor. Padme falls to her knees beside Clovis's body, tears streaming down her face. Anakin stands over the body, his lightsaber still humming in the silent room, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The sound of approaching footsteps echoes down the corridor, and a group of Senate guards burst into the room with their blasters raised, ordering Anakin to drop his weapon and surrender. Anakin looks down at Padme, her heart shattered, then at the lifeless body of Clovis. The rage drains from his face, replaced by a hollow emptiness. He deactivates his lightsaber, letting it fall to the floor with a clatter, and raises his hands in surrender. He mutters that he didn't mean to, but the guards move in, cuffing his hands behind his back as Padme watches Anakin be led away towards the Republic prison. Anakin's cell was dimly lit, damp, and too small for one man alone. He sits on the edge of the bed, lost in thought, as Obi-Wan comes to visit him. He tells Anakin he came as soon as he could after he heard the news. Anakin had his head in his hands and tells Obi-Wan what he did, killing Clovis in anger, and Kenobi asks what drove him to do this. And this is where Anakin is forced to reveal the truth to Obi-Wan about his relationship with Padme, their marriage, and how she revealed to him her affair with Clovis, sending him into a blinding rage, causing him to lose himself. Obi-Wan tells Anakin that he's always walked a dangerous path with his emotions, that his love for Padme, fear for loss are things the Council would never understand, but he tells Skywalker that he'll stand by his side no matter what happens. He tells Anakin about his trial that will commence in a few days' time, which will decide his fate. Kenobi leaves, but gives Anakin some final words, telling him that anger and fear lead to the dark side, that what he did wasn't just a crime, but a step towards something darker. Kenobi walks out, determined to stay by Anakin's side, fearful that his apprentice may have just started down a path he cannot return from. The trial of Anakin Skywalker begins. The grand halls of the Galactic Senate is filled with tense silence as senators, Jedi Masters, and high-ranking officials are gathered. In the center of the room, a large circular platform holds the accused, Anakin Skywalker, who stands with his head bowed. The moderator of the trial, Chancellor Palpatine, stands to commence the trial. He proclaims the court is now in session, and they will address the charges against Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, who stands accused of the murder of Senator Rush Clovis of the Intergalactic Banking Clan. Holographic images and video recordings flicker to life in the center of the room, showing the moment of the attack. Gasps echo throughout the chamber as the gravity of the crime is laid bare. Anakin remains silent, his face pale but resolute. Palpatine follows on, asking Jedi Skywalker how he pleads, and Anakin knows he only has one option: guilty. The words hang in the air, sending a ripple of shock throughout the assembly. The Jedi Council members exchange troubled glances, and whispers spread amongst the senators. Palpatine continues, proclaiming that in light of Anakin's guilty plea and service to the Republic during the war and time before that, he will sentence Anakin to 15 years in Republic prison. Furthermore, the Jedi Council has recommended that he immediately be removed from the Jedi Order. He is no longer a Jedi, and all privileges and responsibilities associated with the title will be revoked. These words hit Anakin like a physical blow, but he stands tall, accepting his fate. The court is adjourned, and Anakin is taken away to prison. News of Anakin's sentencing was blasted all around the entire galaxy. He was the hero of the Clone War, the chosen one of the Jedi Order, imprisoned for murder. This was a huge disappointment, as Anakin was the idol of millions around the galaxy. He spends his days inside a collage of grey cold walls. His cell is small, with little more than a cot, a small table, and a viewport that offers a narrow glimpse of the city outside. Days blur into weeks, and weeks into months. The real punishment for Anakin is the isolation, and he spends most of his time meditating in the Force. Obi-Wan visits regularly, his presence a lifeline for Anakin. Despite the circumstances, Obi-Wan has not abandoned him. He brings news of the galaxy, updates on the war, and perhaps most importantly, reminders of their friendship. Kenobi tells Anakin he wishes he could be there with him on the front lines, that they could still use his strength and insight. But Anakin tells his master that prison is where he belongs. But Obi-Wan reassures Anakin that this is where he is now, but not where he belongs. Ahsoka also visits with Obi-Wan between their missions, Kenobi having taken over her training. Her presence is a bittersweet reminder of the life Anakin once led, but he's proud of the advancements she's making. Padme didn't visit Anakin for 3 months. The weight of the guilt, shame, and heartbreak had kept her away, but she no longer could, and she needed to see him. Her heart had been empty, and there's been a gaping hole inside. Anakin was beyond joyful when he saw Padme for the first time in months, as he didn't think she would come. Padme admits she didn't plan on it, but that she needed to. Anakin apologizes for everything, that his own selfish actions have ruined everything. He wishes he could go back and change it all, leave the Jedi Order, so he didn't have to leave Padme alone on Coruscant during the war. Padme tells him that she doesn't know how to make sense of it all, that what he did hurt her deep to her core, but she can't deny the feelings she still holds towards him. Anakin tells her he never stopped loving her, that he understands why she did what she did, and even after everything, his heart is still hers. Tears well up in Padme's eyes as she nods in agreement. She knows she shouldn't. Anakin murdered Rush Clovis and was convicted and sentenced to prison. She should hate Anakin for what he's done, but she just can't. Her entire moral being is screaming at her to leave, but she loves Anakin, the man he is deep down, not the man who made a single mistake at a time of anger. Padme gives into her heart's desires, and they decide to rekindle their relationship, as they know they are soulmates and made for each other. They both made one mistake, and will regret it for their entire lives. Padme visits Anakin often, and they begin rekindling what they once had. But someone who also visited Anakin often was Palpatine. He constantly told Anakin that it pains him to see him in prison, knowing all he's done for the Republic and Jedi. He uses this time to slowly manipulate Anakin, telling the boy he believes his actions were justified, that he acted out of passion, out of love, a sentiment the Jedi have long sought to suppress. These words sink into Anakin's soul as he slowly begins to justify his actions in his mind. He tells Anakin that the Jedi have always feared his power, that they know he's destined for greatness, something they could never control, and now they've abandoned him in his hour of need. Anakin agrees with this, but he has resigned to the Jedi always making poor decisions, that he has to live with it. But Palpatine tells him that he doesn't. The Jedi are flawed, blinded by their own arrogance, that they left him to rot whilst the galaxy is on the brink of collapse. The war continues, the people suffer, and the Jedi cling to their dogma. Palpatine changes the subject, telling Anakin the best he could do was secure a 15-year sentence, but that when the war is over and he steps down as Chancellor, he will use his executive power to free him from prison, and he will not leave him here to wither away like the Jedi. Anakin's eyes widen in surprise, a flicker of hope ignited inside of him. He thanked Palpatine for this, and Anakin starts to wonder whether he can actually go back to his previous life, back to Padme, free of war, and he can have everything he's ever wanted. This is all part of Palpatine's plan. Anakin is still an integral part, and he will use him to become the Emperor. Anakin spends 2 long years like this, and the Clone War is at its peak. Kenobi and Ahsoka haven't been able to visit Anakin in months since they've been constantly away at war. Padme's visits have become less frequent, due to her being busy 24/7, with the war effort being at its peak. Only Palpatine has been constantly visiting Anakin, as his loneliness begins to increase. There's a slight hint of anger there, but Anakin suppresses it. However, there's no one to stop Palpatine's manipulations. He begins telling Anakin that he's become afraid of the Jedi, that their ineffectiveness in the war and public discontent around this is getting to them, and suspects they might take over the Republic. Anakin can't believe this, but Palpatine tells him that everyone who has power is afraid to lose it, even the Jedi. Palpatine spews these lies to Anakin for weeks, and he begins believing it. But what affected Anakin the most is when Palpatine tells him if the Jedi remove him from office before his term ends, then he'll never be able to free him, and if they decide to completely take over the Republic, they may never let Anakin out of prison. This can't happen. Anakin won't let it happen. He must be freed from jail and live the life he wants with Padme. He asks Palpatine what he'll do, who says he has little options. The Jedi are simply too powerful, and if they really wanted to, they could take over any day now. Anakin's anxiety starts to rise, and Palpatine pounces on this. He changes the topic of conversation to Padme, and Anakin admits that he feels her pulling away from him, that she's had enough of him in jail, which is even more reason that he has to get back to her. Palpatine tells Anakin that he feels obligated to tell his friend the truth. Skywalker was confused by this statement, but Palpatine tells Anakin that he thinks Padme is having an affair once again. These are obviously lies, but Palpatine will use this to his advantage. Anakin's mind goes crazy. This can't be happening again. Palpatine tells him that she's been seen late at night with visitors into and out of her apartment, and that it's someone quite dear to him, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anakin's eyes goes wide with hatred as he feels the anger he once felt again returning, back when he saw Rush Clovis, sparking the flame inside of Anakin. Palpatine consoles him, apologizing for Padme's unfaithfulness, but tells him he will never betray him like Padme and the Jedi, but he needs his help, that he's truly fearful the Jedi will attempt to take over the Republic, and asks Anakin if he'll help him, and Skywalker agrees, truly believing Palpatine is the only one left who cares about him. The Chancellor orders one of the Coruscant guards to leave his cell open, and Anakin makes his daring escape that night. He makes his way into Palpatine's office, who has a set of bodyguard armor with a helmet waiting that Anakin can use to hide his identity. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan has just returned from a mission, and is with Padme in her office, discussing the opinions of the delegation of 2,000, informing Obi-Wan so he can inform the Jedi Council, as well as gearing up to go visit Anakin together. But Palpatine was aware of this, and timed it perfectly to go visit them with his new bodyguard Anakin. They walk in, and Anakin witnesses it with his own eyes. Obi-Wan and Padme together, and alone in her office, and he relives the moment from 2 years ago. He takes off his helmet to reveal the face of Anakin Skywalker. Padme and Obi-Wan were shocked by this, and asks him what he's doing here. But Palpatine turns to Anakin, and tells him this is all the proof he's needed, that his closest friends have been going behind his back the entire time. They comprehend what Palpatine is saying, and fight back, saying it's all lies, but Palpatine silences them, saying he won't hear any more of their treachery. Anakin stands there shaking, his hand white hot and clenching. If he had his lightsaber, he might do something foolish, but Palpatine was smarter than that. He drags Anakin out of the room with him and back to his office. He apologizes to him having to see that, but knows he had to with his own eyes. He tells Anakin he believes Padme and her allies in the Senate are a part of the Jedi's plot, and both must pay for their crimes against Anakin and the Republic. He agrees and asks Palpatine what they will do to stop the Jedi, and Palpatine tells him he has a plan, but for it to work, he must join him, to learn to know the dark side of the Force from him. That is the only way he can get revenge on those who've taken everything from him. Anakin pledges his allegiance, and the Chosen One was now under Palpatine's control. Together they execute Order 66 and rush towards the Jedi Temple, leading the squadron of clones against the Jedi. They stick together, as the Council could attack them at any moment, and Anakin hopes to see Kenobi so he can enact his revenge. They take out the minor members of the Council, Saisi Tin, Shak Ti, and begin advancing deeper into the temple, as Anakin sees him, Kenobi, the man who stole his wife from him, right there. Anakin rushes at him with an unrelenting fury as they lock blades. Obi-Wan attempting to reason with Anakin, but Skywalker was too far gone. Obi-Wan was a perfect counter to Anakin, blocking his attacks with precision and caution, and the fight seemed to be in a stalemate. But Anakin was not alone, as he and Kenobi lock blades, whilst the clones rush in behind him and unload blaster bolts onto the Jedi Master. Kenobi collapsed, lifeless, and Anakin had enacted his revenge. They wipe out the rest of the Jedi at the temple, including Master Yoda, who could not defeat the two Sith by himself. Windu wasn't at the temple, but would be a matter for a later date. Palpatine heads to the Senate, where he tells them of the Jedi's treachery, attempting to take over the Republic for personal gain. Shock and surprise capture the Senate, as Palpatine proclaims he will convert the Republic into the first galactic empire to create a peace and secure society. This receives cheers around the chamber, and the Sith's victory is assured. Meanwhile, after this, Anakin goes to Padme's office as she sits there alone, thinking on Palpatine's empire, but also the fall of the Jedi, wondering about Anakin's involvement. And the man on her mind walks in, eyes dripped in yellow anger, and he had come with one purpose. Padme stands and goes to speak, but she cannot utter any words. Anakin had complete control of her windpipe, squeezing it with every ounce of strength he had, and she muttered her last breath. Anakin Skywalker was gone, now something new, but his power and potential in the Force was unlimited. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to check out what if the Yuzong Vong invaded during the Clone War, and what if General Grievous survived. Please like and subscribe, let me know what you thought in the comments below, and may the Force be with you.